It's a genuine privilege for us to be able to carry out the work that we do, but not one single part of it would be possible without your support. This year, we've seen typhoons that have wiped out communities in an instant, earthquakes that have shaken towns to the ground, and war, fighting that has forced families to run, giving them no choice but to abandon the wreckage of their homes. We've responded to over 25 disasters this year across more than 20 countries. You have provided more than 9,000 families with shelter. You have given each of these families the opportunity to live in comfort and the tools they need to help them rebuild their lives. Everything you're about to see was only made possible because of you. One of our first and largest responses this year started in December 2012 when Typhoon Bopha ripped through the region of Mindanao in the Philippines. It flattened trees and destroyed houses.
The ShelterBox deployment to the Philippines in December 2012 again highlighted the vulnerabilities some people face in their own home. Joe Madanansil lived in a community on an island off the coast of Kinablangan when Typhoon Bopha struck.
The wind was already very strong and I was alone in the house. And at around 12 to 1 o'clock, there was a blackout, total blackout. All the trees, the coconut, were falling down. I just hid under my bed, and in 3 minutes, when I was already under my bed, the coconut fall on my bed. I thought I thought I would die.
Since the typhoon hit, the island has been declared too dangerous to return to. Like many, Joe not only lost his home, but his land too. John Cordell is a ShelterBox response team member. He arrived in country shortly after the typhoon to assess the need.
We viewed a region which had been completely thrown onto its back. People were still trying to carry on locating families, loved ones. A storm such as this has never struck Mindanao before, but it also left people with a great deal of confusion about where they would find their future. The world was no longer the world that they remembered. I think probably one of the biggest benefits that ShelterBox can convey to people in these circumstances is to try and reduce the uncertainty that is almost overwhelming for them. It gives them something that they can be certain about. They know they have a roof over their heads. They know that they can keep their kids warm at night. That life, at least in a very small way, will continue as before. What they know is that their immediate needs can be taken care of.
To help us continually improve the work that we do, we need to listen to the needs and experiences of those people that we are helping. In August this year, we returned to the Philippines to talk to those families who had received ShelterBox aid following Typhoon Bopha.
So this was an evaluation trip, which is something that's increasingly important as we go forward that we do. So by going back into the field and talking to people, we can find out whether the aid that we gave them was what they needed. It's not enough just to give out boxes and to do it quickly. We need to go back and talk to people, because by talking to them we can learn, and by learning we can improve what we do.
ShelterBox's new Chief Executive, Alison Wallace, was part of the team that met up with beneficiaries and took part in the study.
We're in the middle of one of the camps set up by ShelterBox back in December. There's 40 families and tents left here out of more than 100. These people are still waiting to be relocated. There's real issues around whether they can clear land and whether they can afford to rebuild, and the access to building materials. People are still here, still in ShelterBox tents, over 6 months after the original typhoon. So that clearly speaks to the quality of the equipment that we're providing people in the ShelterBoxes.
As a charity, it's really important that we're accountable, and we can ask ourselves 3 questions. Are we doing what we'd said we'd do? Are we making a difference? And are we doing the right things operationally and strategically? And it's only by going back into the field that we can get the answers to these questions.
The conflict in Syria has been in and out of the headlines for the past 2 years, but since the first days of clashes, we've been looking for ways to help. As the fighting escalated, so too did our response. We began this by delivering aid in the neighbouring countries of Lebanon, Jordan and Iraqi Kurdistan. In Lebanon in particular, Finding families and providing tents proved extremely difficult but incredibly rewarding.
People think that this is the crisis now. In reality, it's not. This is just the start of it.
Yeah.
The real crisis will start to emerge, will start to happen when the Damascus battles become really tough and you will have millions of people just leaving.
It is now said that 1 in 10 people living in Lebanon is a refugee. This is a huge strain on the smallest of Syria's neighbours, and as thousands flee Syria, some refugees have little to greet them in terms of aid and assistance.
We saw the refugees living in self-made shelter. They had to scavenge the material, used cardboard to put on the walls. Seeing these families living in this poor condition gave me goosebumps. The small children, they have been living there for a few weeks.
The ops team at ShelterBox began planning the response back in August 2012. It has been a long and difficult process.
In Lebanon, there's a real concern with helping refugees become an established part of the population. It's something that has led to civil war in the past. And for that reason, the Lebanese government hasn't decided to set up refugee camps, which means that you have a huge number of people needing services which can only be provided in a very decentralized way. Dividing a consignment of 700 tents meant that we were able to get very good spread across the country. It also meant that we only focused on the absolutely most vulnerable people. But doing that obviously meant that we needed a huge amount of manpower.
Slowly but surely, with the help of 27 implementing partners, tents began to reach families.
We met a family that received a ShelterBox tent a couple days before, and the family was so nice. They invited us into their new home. They made some coffee for us and they told us what it meant to get a ShelterBox, that it really made a difference. The mother, she just said, well, it's the first time after a few days I see my children smile again. Because, you know, they just have a good night of sleep and we can be together as a family here. And that just gives me such a warm feeling that ShelterBox really does make a difference and can help families to start building a family life again.
Even from surrounding countries, delivering aid in Syria seemed unlikely. But earlier this year, an opportunity presented itself that changed that situation.
Okay, hi, we're in the ShelterBox warehouse and we're packing today. We've changed our packs specifically for Syria. We've got mosquito nets, kitchen sets, solar light, ground sheets. Over here we've got blankets going in, water carriers, and we've also got family-sized tents. The next time this is opened, it will be by a Syrian family getting this vital equipment.
The families were seeking to help escape the fighting in the cities. We've heard reports of up to 30 people living in a single tent. Others are completely without shelter and they're sleeping under trees. There's a massive need for shelter and for ShelterBox aid.
In this very desperate situation, the lack of shelter isn't the only issue these families face.
Syria had a developing education system. The war has disrupted that, so now an entire generation of Syrian children are denied the right and access to education. This will have serious consequences in the future. When it comes to rebuild the country, people need to be literate and need to have skills in order to engage in that reconstruction.
Thanks to our supporters, we have been able to provide Syrian families with the basic equipment they need to survive. Your support also means over 1,000 children have received educational resources so they can continue to learn.
On a national level, education can help rebuild a country, but equally as important as that, on an individual level, it can bring a sense of normality to children as well. It provides an opportunity for routine and to meet and play with their friends.
Seeing ShelterBox aid go into Syria itself wasn't the only success of its kind this year. Through our Rotary contacts, we were given the opportunity to enter and deliver aid in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea.
The interesting thing of working in the DPRK is that it forces you to reevaluate the criteria for why we're there. The DPRK are not particularly popular in the world. They have a fiercely independent viewpoint. They are inward looking and hostile to some countries that may have raised funds for ShelterBox. So you think about, why are we there? Why are we helping these people? Typhoon Bolivar hit the DPRK late summer, and it hit it very hard. The terrain funnels the winds down the steep valleys and directs it towards some of the towns, smashing and pushing over houses. I went out in January to oversee the distributions that had happened. The town leaders were at great pains to point out the damage that had been caused, how they were up against the elements and the conditions to repair. Houses that had literally been smashed in two, like a gigantic fist had just pushed over half the house. And people were still living in houses where the ceiling was bowing down and was starting to cave in, but that was all that they had. So the destruction was really widespread and very obvious. And here we are in a village in DPRK Korea. Devastation that the typhoon caused, smashed the buildings up. It's middle of winter, so repair is very, very difficult. And as we come around the corner, what do you know? We can see in the distance some ShelterBox tents. To see the tents actually being used way beyond what was expected in temperature, climate, international boundaries, to reach these people, it was a great relief and a great joy to me that we'd pushed as far as we could, and all the effort had been rewarded, and these people were actually getting everything that the donor had imagined when they gave the money to us and entrusted it to us, to take it beyond these borders, beyond these political problems, through the red tape, to get to the people that needed it. In all situations where we come across complex issues with aid distribution, you boil it down to its basic principles, and they are these people in need? Do they need shelter? Is there any help that's coming to these people? And can we work with them so that the most vulnerable people are getting the aid? And the answer to all those questions were favourable. So when it comes down to it, it is just people helping people. And the closer you get to the actual people in the tents and looking at their destroyed houses, these people are desperate. You don't live in a tent at -25 and below unless that is your only option. And if you think about it in its simplest values of people helping people who can't get help from anywhere else, then ShelterBox really, really does need to be there.
Whilst our role in many of our past responses has come to an end, elsewhere the work continues. In Syria, the need for education grows each day, and most recently, your support has provided enough school packs for 370 Syrian children in Iraqi Kurdistan. During the making of this video, Typhoon Haiyan hit the Philippines. It caused utter devastation. The response from our donors was immediate, and this meant that within days we were able to start delivering enough aid to help thousands of families affected by the typhoon. The sheer scale of the damage caused means that our response in the Philippines is likely to continue for many months. We're only able to keep providing vital aid to families like those affected by Typhoon Haiyan because of your support. The final thing is to say thank you. Thank you from all of the families that you have sheltered this year, and from all of the children who now have the resources they need to learn. And of course, a huge thank you from us. Without you, it wouldn't be possible.